I'd like to call the meeting to order, and let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Support.
All right. Bart and Dawn.
There you go.
You're
We got
on
that
the
right.
side, all right. There we go. Okay, and then do we have any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes. Recognition of visitors, I understand we don't have any. Okay. So we'll go right on to discussion items, and I think that Melissa is here for the first discussion item. I don't know if Doug wants, Dr. Van.
No,
wants to
Mrs.
represent.
Not yet. Mrs. Thomas, do you have anything you want to say before we go forward?
No, just that Melissa's done a great job of supporting the student population. In student services, there are different groups of students that have certain rights, protections, and services because of their eligibility. And so this particular group of students that are experiencing housing insecurity is something that Melissa has supported in her role and has watched evolve over time. So she's here to just kind of give a short update on the status of that and how she's supporting this population.
I was told I have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
We're gonna do it, you guys. Okay. So I think just a couple of key points that I wanted to hit on tonight while we're here. I really wanted to help you guys understand how we determine eligibility under the Federal McKinney-Vento Act. I wanted to share some of our statistics here in the district of students that qualify, and then bless you. I also wanted to share some of the ways in which we support these students and their families once we do identify them. So I think the best way to start is really just understanding the definition of homelessness under McKinney-Vento. I think all of us can understand, the word homeless and brings a picture to mind when we understand what that looks like, whether it's at Hartside Park downtown in Grand Rapids or someone on the streets. And while that is homelessness defined under McKinney-Vento, the definition for K-12 is a little bit more broad. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys so that you can understand what we're working with. So for the McKinney-Vento Act specifically, homelessness is defined as individuals who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And I wanted to share a couple scenarios with you of what we see here in the district. These are probably the 4 most common scenarios, not just here in Hudsonville, but also across the nation. So the first one up there is something that we call doubled up. And what that means is that you have a family living with another family or friends potentially due to economic hardship. We do a lot of families that are doubled up because it's mutually beneficial, right? You might have like grandparents living with their adult children, and the grandparents are reaping the benefits maybe of some caregiving. They maybe provide some daycare for the children in the home. So that would not be McKinney-Vento. That's just a mutually beneficial, multi-generational living situation. So doubled up is truly that if that family that is living there in a doubled up situation, if they weren't living with those family or friends, they would truly be housing insecure. So we're talking living in a shelter or finding some other type of temporary housing. So we see that the most here in Hudsonville. The second one on there is unaccompanied minors. We see this more at the high school level. These are students that are minor students that are living in a residence other than their home. They're not with their maybe custodial parents or their parent or guardian. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Oftentimes we see a contentious relationship between our students and their family, and either they're asked to leave or they choose to leave in order to find a more stable housing situation. So that really doesn't happen a ton other than at the high school, and then I walk alongside of those students to make sure that they're supported and have what they need both at school and obviously that they're safe in their living situation. The third one on there is a true unhoused situation, and this is really more, I think, what we picture when we say the word homeless or housing insecure. These are students or families that are living in cars, campers, hotels, or motels. And we do have students that have, over the years, have lived in all of those different scenarios. We have students currently that live in hotels and live in campers as their primary residence. And so we, in the district, you might be familiar with Baldwin Oaks Campground off of Baldwin. We have quite a few families that are choosing to live there, affordability reasons and otherwise not able to secure housing here in the district. And then we do have students that are living in hotels. Hudsonville has two. We have the Travel Lodge and we have Quality Inn. And we have families that have resided in both of those hotels. They offer a daily or a weekly rate a lot of times, and so our families will stay there. And then a lot of our families end up transitioning out of those hotel situations and end up sometimes in Kentwood, Grand Rapids, Wyoming, or even out in Holland. And so that is a common situation, and unfortunately a situation that we're seeing a lot more of these last couple of years. And then the last category is our migratory students. We don't have a huge demographic here in Hudsonville of migratory students, but we do have some. And these families are often very transient as they come up seasonally, and they work on a lot of our working farms here in the area. And then when the weather gets cooler, they transition back to warmer climates where they can find work. And so we do have, again, students in all of those different scenarios. I also wanted to briefly touch on this. This is not necessarily McKinney-Vento, but I felt like it would be a really big miss if I didn't at least just put this on your radar. So there is a national acronym called the ALICE threshold, and ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. And so a lot of our families that are McKinney-Vento are in crisis, right? They're at a high risk level, and they're often in crisis. Our ALICE threshold is tricky because those are families that are just making it. And so they're one catastrophe away from maybe becoming housing insecure. So these are families that are often employed, but they're just making it paycheck to paycheck. And so there's not a rainy day fund, there's not savings in the bank that if there's an emergency, they're gonna have the funding to take care of that. So I wanted to share some data in our county. So 35% of the families in Ottawa County do fall into this demographic, which is a significant number of families. And then according to the 2024 ALICE stats, they guesstimate that approximately $75,000 is needed for a family of four, so 2 adults and 2 kids, to afford the cost of living in Ottawa County. And that cost of living is really to keep your household running. So basic necessities like food, transportation, healthcare, childcare, etc. So it's not cheap to live in Ottawa County, and I think any of us that live here know that. But I also think it's important to recognize that a lot of these families are fragile, and oftentimes we see a lot of our single mothers with children living in this ALICE threshold, and again, they're one thing away from not being able to make ends meet. So while they're not McKinney-Vento, we are keeping our eye on this demographic because they need support too. And just because they're working, I think sometimes the assumption is there that they're figuring it out and they're doing okay, and a lot of these families also need support as well.
Melissa, what do you mean with keeping your eye on? What does that entail?
Sure. So I think it's really, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. No, you're good. But I think just jumping ahead, I think it's really just around educating our stakeholder groups, right? Our teachers, our administrators, our administrative assistants that, hey, if you have a family that comes to you and they need support in some way, just because they're not McKinney-Vento doesn't mean that we can't help walk alongside of that family and supply resources or community connection. So I think keeping an eye on that is just as families often feel comfortable coming into the buildings and sharing with people that they feel comfortable with. And so they're able to put those families on our radar too.
In the past, I've done some financial counseling through Love.
Yes.
And do you have any relationship, or we have any relationship with them?
We do, yeah, that's in here too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But why don't
Yeah.
you just
Do you want me to
call
finish?
back?
I'll get there.
I
I promise.
promise.
I did, it's okay, it's okay. Doug said it was interactive, so you know, let's be interactive, it's cool. It's all good.
We've only got 7 minutes left.
I know, gosh, I'm like, going so fast, it's funny. Okay, so all this to say is we do collect data, so as far as like your question of how are we keeping an eye on things. So we are looking at patterns and trends. I have data that I've been in this role now for 7 years. So we have good data from the last 6, I could put 7 on there, but I had 6 for you guys. So I at least wanted to show you just some of the trends that we're seeing, and you'll notice a couple of things. So when I first started in this role in 2019 and 2020, Hudsonville had averaged about like mid-80s of students that were identified under McKinney-Vento. And we kind of held steady a little bit, and then we had COVID. I won't go into COVID, but you guys, you were here for that. And then after COVID, nationally, there was a dip in numbers of students identified under McKinney-Vento because a lot of these families are so transient, many of them just did not come back. And it wasn't just a Hudsonville, it was a national trend. And then you can see we've kind of started to rebound again post-COVID. In 23-24, we were back up in the mid-80s, and last year we were actually up 45 students. So last year we were at about like 125, 126 students that that were identified, and this school year, we're off to the same trajectory. I actually expect us to probably grow a little bit more this year, especially with free lunch and breakfast kind of being on the chopping block here in the next couple of weeks. I anticipate for some of our families, it's going to be tricky to make ends meet. So that number has increased, and I do expect it to continue upward as well.
Do we have what the overall percentage is, like for each year, like that's like 8% of our student population gone up to 12%, do you know?
I mean, I can do the math for you, I don't have it on here.
Yeah, I was just curious, we could still look at like the percentages.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, the enrollment's been pretty steady. I would say it's increased probably 1.5%. But I'm looking at from the beginning to the end of that chart, so
Yeah.
each one I don't.
For sure. And then I guess I just wanted to answer those questions that you have. So who are our partnerships and how do we support these families? So we do that in a variety of ways, and I think a lot of it is, like I said, educating our stakeholders. So every year I present to our administrative assistance group at their retreat in August, because they're often on the front lines of hearing about some of these families that are facing hardship. Or we get notified, Robin and I talk a lot about new enrollments that flag. We have questions in our enrollment that we're required to have in there. And if a family indicates a certain living situation, whether they're doubled up for hardship or things like that, it does send me an alert, and Robin and I will often work together to make sure that we have those families identified and supported right away, so that students are not missing school. We also educate our teachers, our administrators every year at admin retreat. So I feel like getting out in front of everyone, and obviously you guys tonight, it just really helps spread the word, and making sure that we all know that we have support available for these families. So networking with outside agencies, we have a ton of partnerships in the community. We do work with Love Your Neighbor alongside of a lot of different church partners or even private partners in the district. It's been really great to partner with these various agencies over the years. We've really gotten to know them. They support a ton of our students, not just our McKinney-Vento population, but at the holidays, both for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. So we just really have a very strong partnership with a lot of agencies in the area. The regional support, we also have, well, I guess the other thing with networking with outside agencies, every year we have our hand-to-hand food bags that go home with students over the weekend that get weekend food assistance. But we also partner with Love Your Neighbor and Hand to Hand at the beginning of the school year to provide backpacks and school supplies across all of our buildings. So that helps for students too. And then we have regional support through our ISD. And again, we have professional development that we partake in every single year with our regional cohort. And usually 4 or 5 times a year, I get together with other Ottawa County McKinney-Vento liaisons, and we talk and problem solve and troubleshoot. It's a really great place to get ideas and get support for this work as well. And then over the last couple of years, just a couple of things that we've been really proud of that we've been able to get off the ground and get going. The first is something called Care Portal. And the best way to explain it to you is we are able to, in an anonymous way, put up a need for a family on a platform called Care Portal. And it pushes out over a 25-mile radius here in the area with local church partners that have signed on to Care Portal, or even independent people. Like, you could log in as an individual and look at needs. And what we do is we're able to put a need up. It pushes it out to the community who participates in Care Portal. And then so an agency, a church, a person is able to say, hey, I got that. And then we have the need met, and we're able to coordinate together to be able to get those needs met. 2 of my favorite things through Care Portal in the last year is, last year we had a senior, and they had a tub in their home. They had a manufactured home, so it was a different tub size. And their tub and their subfloor was sinking, and so they weren't able to take showers, and they didn't have a way or the finances to get that fixed. So we were able to put that need up on Care Portal, and the senior student was like, hey, it's cool that we can get this, you know, the tub and the subfloor fixed, but I really wanna learn how to do that. So when we have a community partner come in, would they be willing to teach me how to fix it too, or help me fix it? So we had a community partner who's a builder, was like, hey, I got that. Took our senior student to Lowe's, they got all the supplies, they were able to redo the subfloor and put the tub in. So our senior got to learn some really cool skills, and this partner was able to come alongside of a family when they were having a really hard time. So that was cool. And then this year, most recently, I had another senior who doesn't have the discretionary funds to be able to afford senior photos. And so mom needs to allocate all of her funds to food and clothing and things like that, right? And so we were able to say, hey, does anyone out in the community, are you a photographer? Do you know a photographer? Would you be willing to help support or offer a reduced rate? And we be a photographer in the community, say, hey, I got that, and so she's gonna have her senior pictures taken by a professional photographer at no charge, which is really, really cool. So Care Portal has been awesome because it saves me from having to make a bazillion cold calls to people or like calling around and saying, hey, I have this need, how can we get it met? This is just such a seamless way for us to have our families with needs get partnered with someone in the community, which is really cool. And then Hop Skip Drive is also recently new. The best way to explain this to you guys is it's like student Uber. And so I'm sure you're aware that we don't have a never-ending supply of bus drivers. So some of these routes for our McKinney-Vento families that move out of the district, we are still required as their school of origin to provide transportation to and from school. Sometimes that looks like support with a gas card, and some of our families do not have vehicles. So in a situation where a family doesn't have a vehicle, we still have an obligation to get this student to and from school. And so we have partnered with Hop Skip Drive, and they provide rides for our students. They're able to get them to and from school safely. Our transportation department has been awesome with getting everything up and running for that. And it's just been a really great way to not tax our bus driver fleet and still be able to get kids to and from school every single day. So that's been a really cool partnership as well. So those are just two things that I feel like are celebrations over the last couple of years to support our demographic here in the district. And I also want to note, Hop Skip Drive is definitely at this time McKinney-Vento specific. Care Portal is any student or family that had a need that came through, we would be able to support that through Care Portal. So it's not just a McKinney-Vento support.
There is a way Melissa approves the request.
I do.
There's
We
some
vet it.
people that
Yes.
it's not just
It's not
any
free for all.
request, it's a request that she approves.
Correct, yeah, it comes through and we approve it, absolutely. And then I guess just in closing, I think sometimes our families really struggle, and rightfully so, coming forward with being able to share that they're having a hard time. It's really hard to ask for help. And so I think sometimes people carry it really well, and on the surface, we're seeing that everybody's okay, or it looks okay. And just a reminder that, I think a lot of this is really heavy for a lot of people, and just because we're seeing something on the outside doesn't mean that people aren't dealing with their own journey on the inside. So I guess that's what I have.
So make a quick closing comment. It's really great what Melissa can do to connect not only families but with organizations. It's been very helpful. This isn't all she does, clearly. There's many other things that she does and has her hands in. But when we sent out the information about school lunches a week or so ago, there's many people out there that don't understand that not everybody has the means to make food for their kid for lunch every day. And not all of them either will qualify for free news lunch or fill out the paperwork to have that. That's also hard. So just having these extra resources, Care Portal started a few years ago with a church partner that reached out and said, we'll fund it and go from there. And then at the end of 1 year, we're like, you know what, we'll fund it. It's that important to our community and to our kids. So I just appreciate the work Melissa's done.
How many churches do you have right now?
On Care Portal,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the most up-to-date count is on that. I know, here's what's interesting, is we also have churches like in Holland or Kentwood that have picked up our requests as well.
Okay.
So it's not just an Ottawa County specific thing, it's churches in Kent County and also like Holland, Muskegon. We've had people pick things up that I was like, wow, it's shocking sometimes what people will pick up, which is really cool. We had a mechanic here in town individually just pick up a family request for a car repair too. So it's not just churches, but private individuals and businesses as well.
Yeah, we've had a lot more people who aren't even associated with our church calling our church over the last couple of years, asking for benevolence and all types of things, and, we go through our due diligence and stuff with them, and then, go from there. I was also talking to the fire chief in, Jamestown, who goes to our church, and he was telling me just about all of the things that they're seeing and having to grapple and deal with now, that he said 5 years ago, he didn't have these issues in Jamestown or in Ottawa County.
Yeah, a lot of our church partners, I think, one of the stats that's interesting is, so United Way of West Michigan is who supplies the ALIS stats for Ottawa County. And when I was, something that stuck out to me was that 70% of that United Way West Michigan key stakeholders that they interviewed, affordable housing was identified as the #1 concern in Ottawa County. And then following that was utility assistance, income support, food, meals, clothing, and hygiene. And so our church partners also, we've been talking talking a lot with them, and even with Love Your Neighbor, I met with her a couple weeks ago, their community connection coordinator, her name's Elizabeth Parrish. And we met, and I'm not glad she's feeling the same things, but it is validating, cause sometimes it's like, man, I'm running into a brick wall with trying to find some rental support or utility assistance, like it just isn't as available as it used to be, and she was saying the same thing. And so I think a lot of our partners, both church and otherwise, are having a tricky time because their benevolence funds are being tapped with the need.
Quick question on one of the things that you said about the transportation aspect. So if there's a McKinney Vento student, you said, if you are the school of origin, tell me what that means.
Yes. So the school of origin is a school where the student or family is identified as housing insecure. So that's where they become like homeless under the McKinney Vento Act.
Okay.
And so the goal is educational continuity for families and students that otherwise are very transient, right? And so the goal is to try to at least put a Band-Aid on things if we can, and it's reasonable, to have the student finish the year with us. And then every year in August and September, I have 30 school days to redetermine eligibility for the next year. So some of our families remain eligible just because they're in situations that would meet the threshold for eligibility. Some of our families secure housing and they're no longer eligible, and that's a win, right, in my book. And so if we're the school of origin, though, we are responsible for providing that transportation. But what we do is we partner with the district of residence. So let's just say it's like Wyoming. We're the school of origin, Wyoming is the school of residence. I will partner with the Wyoming's McKinney Vento liaison, and we split the cost of transportation 50-50. It's required to be able to do that. And we bill usually monthly. If we're the school of origin, we're required to do all the legwork to set it up, and then we basically just send them the bill for their portion.
Okay.
How do we pay for that?
We do get some money,
Dollar for dollar?
some. It's normally, we started tracking it about 10 years ago, the total cost. And this isn't that abnormal, but we spend around 23, 24 and get 2,000 to 3,000. So, but it doesn't mean we don't have the requirement to do it's a requirement. I mean, it's the law, but it also, Melissa, I've cited that she talked about her time doing this. She came to us in Hudsonville as an expert, and it really has streamlined our programs because it's made it better for the participants and staff. She just has made this program run better. And got to see that in place this year with the family that just came up and hugged on her, did all these things. You can tell Melissa had worked with them before. They love the resources, but I also see on the other side of it, it's not just a giveaway. They know they've got to follow the program requirements. So I feel like we've got an efficient program. We've removed barriers for our students. Our students are getting better education, but that's roughly the economics of it. It's not funded very well.
So Melissa, I would take it from what you said that your contacts are more transactional rather than transformational. I mean, like you gotta take care of that need at this moment, and that's what we're doing.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I see it a little differently. I think there are some situations when a family is in crisis and it is a transactional, we have to get this family out of a car.
Right.
Right, and so that can't be, it could be transformative and transactional in the same time, right? But I also feel like when you're in crisis, we gotta figure out how to get out of crisis, right? And then I think a relationship or the transformation can happen from there. A lot of our partners that participate in Care Portal desire a relationship with the family. Part of their involvement with Care Portal, though, is that they are agreeing to meet the family where they're at. Some families don't wanna invite in other people at this time because they don't have capacity for that, right? And so I think it really just depends. I mean, the couple situations that I highlighted, obviously a community partner is coming alongside with that family or with that particular student, like for the photos. And so my hope would be that a relationship could blossom out of that, and I think our community partners would desire that as well. But I'm not gonna lie to you and say every situation is transformative. I think there are times when it's just, we have to get this family what they need, and so it does become transactional in that way, so.
Okay, Pat just, mentioned that you came to us and you know your stuff. And is there another one of you in our district if you're not around? Okay, so.
Are you suggesting that she's going?
No, well, what would we, okay.
She's
so-
staying here.
So what would we do if you were?
You went on a leave of absence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were hit by a car.
How would we?
Well, shoot,
Well,
that's great.
She's got
That feels really
We have-
aggressive, okay.
we have many
Won the law,
positions
say
that are
you won the
same.
law.
So we clearly have people that know more about it now than we did
Sure.
before, but we have some of it.
Okay.
You could have, you could have coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any position.
Right.
If I get hit by a bus with Melissa driving it, then.
I'll honk it twice, right? We do two honks.
And that's one thing I think this administrative staff here at Central Office has done an amazing job of over the last 20 years, is you have created processes. So even if that individual person is not there, that process still is. And as much as we like to have the creator of that process there, we know that they leave us in good hands because of what they've created. And I've seen that time and time again, so kudos to Central Office for creating those processes, because that is how you allow continuity even if you lose someone in that position, which you would not want to.
No.
Thank you for talking.
We'd rather have it just the way it
I
is.
don't know what, I don't know what people are wishing on me tonight, that's, okay.
Well
Good
said,
stuff.
well said.
Yeah. Any other questions that I can help answer or clarify?
Great job.
I went over 10 minutes, I feel like I'm so sorry.
Great job. Mr. Briggs, with federal budget cuts and state budget, who knows where have the resources to cover this? Nonetheless, what programs may be at risk that Melissa talked about due to budget cuts at the federal or state level? You've already, free and reduced lunch is already in fact, right?
Well, most, I think of what things she highlighted are external.
Okay.
External things, like, the benevolence of our churches.
Yep.
The benevolence of our local, not-for-profits. So, I would say those groups would have even more pressure put on them.
Sure.
But, we really, this has never been fully funded, but they've never relaxed the rules. We
So
just
we
chosen
get-
to make it.
The cost of some of these programs too is not substantial to the point that.
I understand,
we have to
I understand, I'm more just asking out of curiosity. Do we get federal funds from any mental? Or
We do.
state, or
Yeah.
state
We
funds?
do, yeah, it's very minimal, like Pat said, I mean, we have,
2,000.
yeah, we have a grant allocation through the ISD, through our regional consortium. And this year, I think our allocation, it fluctuates a bit, depending on if districts decide to take the funds, some don't. We always do. And so, usually, I think last year we ended up around maybe two point,
Just over.
like
Just over
2,500
yeah.
maybe.
Okay.
So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when you're transporting children, that's our biggest allocation of the grant and expense, obviously. We allocate as much as we can of our funding towards that, but it really is not enough to cover the full amount as Pat shared. So, yeah, it is a highly regulated and underfunded program. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
which is a bummer.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Good job.
Yeah,
I just
thank
need
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna drive real safe, I'm so scared to leave now, I'm like, geez, guys, okay. I'm gonna put 2 seatbelts on. Yeah, no, we're text you when you get there. You know, my like 360, you can follow me. Okay, all right, cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, we have our pre-bond survey. The board had an opportunity to take a look at the survey. This started with a conversation to your right, unless you got your mobile around, but we have Jeff with OAK, with GMB, we have Jeremy with OAK, J&J, that we've been meeting with, along with a couple of people from each one of their organizations, and I've been meeting with for the past probably 8 to 9 months, starting preliminary conversations about what's next. We then went into a series of focus groups, which the board heard about, with a lot of feedback. We took the information from the focus groups, we met, and we generated a survey, and started working through a survey and a lot of details about the information that we can ask our constituents what this looks like. Our administrative team took this survey, and they worked on it, gave us a lot of feedback as an entire administrative team during our summer retreat. We cleaned it up, and now we're asking the board to take a closer look at it. The idea behind this survey is many components. Number one, we want to educate our communities so they start asking questions so that we know well in advance. We also need to get a feel for what are some of the priorities that the board will have to grapple with about what do we need to do and to what scope and what degree. There's about $330 to $350 million worth of requests on this survey. We believe, based on the current financial and tax rate, that we can probably generate about $220 million without raising the tax rate, which means everything on this list we can't do. It's not like even we can cut down some of them. It's not like we can take, 10% off of everything, and some of the things we just can't do. So we feel that in order for the board to make a solid decision on what you think should be on a bond issue, if you feel a bond issue is appropriate for the fall of 2026, and I'll talk about that date in a little bit, then that's up to the board to make those decisions. So we'll come back with the board and having some more robust conversations about what this looks like. We'd like to send this survey out the first part of November, and I'm really talking about a few days after the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. There are several bond issues that are up for election, up for vote in November. Byron Center is up for a substantial bond. Zeeland is up for a bond. Rockford's up for a substantial bond. And we'd like to get a feel for what not only the turnout rate would be, but also what is the percent of yes or no and what that looks like. Last May, with the ballot items that were out there, around 50% did not pass. So does that mean a lot of the small rural districts, or is that some of the larger districts? We'll see a lot of other bond issues, but we're looking at 3 pretty close and large districts. What does it look like for them going after a ballot proposal come November of this current year? So we could very easily, if all 3 pass with flying colors, let's get this out. If all 3 are shot down because of X, Y, and Z, maybe we hold off and be like, all right, before we send this out, let's take a couple questions off because we're not even gonna ask those questions. We could have that conversation. I do feel that we've had conversations about the number of, the volume of no voters. Traditionally, we see that population votes regardless. And based on the time of year, it usually matters when you would ask because absentee ballots sent a different message. If you were out of town over the winter months, for example, it was a little bit harder to get an absentee ballot and get that done. Now, everybody gets their absentee ballots, they vote up to 6 weeks before the election. So the volume is increasing. So we feel, and I say we, I can't speak for everybody, but that the November of 26 gubernatorial election has a larger population that vote, and traditionally a larger population will include the yes and the no voters, but it might pull out more people that are maybe a little bit more supportive of school systems and go from there. So that's why we're looking at November of 26. If the board feels the timing's not right, where we are, I think May of 26 is probably too soon. August is kind of a weird election cycle, just because of timing. And November seems to maybe the fit. So that is a discussion item I think the board will want to discuss. It does change timelines tremendously. We do have to go to the Department of Treasury roughly 4 months prior to the election, but we do it usually about 6 months ahead of time. So we look at probably April to go to Treasury so that we can have it on the November election. But the board has to make decisions what's on there by probably January, so we can get everything in order to go from there. So it's a lot of work for our architect with GMB, and clearly the estimation of a lot of these things and the work that OAK has done to get these numbers kind of where they are has been a lot to go through. I can tell you when we first started, some of these items I'll go through, we've had to really narrow down the conversation, and it's really hard with escalation of costs. We don't know what it's gonna cost in a year, let alone potentially 9 years. Because of the scope of the bond, we very well might look at a multi-series bond. Similar to the last bond, we had 140 million. We did it in 2 series. We had a major portion of the work that was done first. We sold about $100 million worth of bonds. And we did the same thing a few years later with the last $40 million worth of bonds. So we put it all together, but it gives us more time to finish the projects. You can't do everything in 1 year. Having said that, if we look at a bond proposal that has a multi-series, maybe it's a 3-series bond based on the scope. Maybe there are some building construction in here that it's like, we don't need this right away, but we want it on the ballot because we want to get it done before this bond is done, based on population change. I'm not saying growth or declining, but population change. Then it gives the board flexibility to do that. Could very easily say, you know, we want to put another 5, 6 building up, but it doesn't look like we need that in the next 2 years, but we probably need it in 5 or 7. We can move that to maybe 2nd series, maybe even 3rd. Maybe at that point, you could say, instead of the building housing 650, we only need it to house 525. You know, it gives you some flexibility to do that. What we can't do is say, we have a bond issue that doesn't include a building, and you're like, oh, we need it, let's do it. Well, it doesn't work that way. We have to do it within the scope of the bond to go from there. So those are some conversations that we're gonna have. I'm gonna go through this, not real quick. I know you've had a chance, hopefully had a chance to review it. Any feedback as we go through it, and I'll go probably question by question if that's okay. This might take a little bit of time. And again, after tonight, if you're like, I have some more feedback, give me a call, pick up the phone. I know Pat and I have beat on this. OEK, GMB have spent a lot of time going through it also. And I'm gonna address some other information, some other survey information that Jeff and GMB has suggested, and so I'll go through that and get to the end. So there's an opening letter that kind of discusses the whole scope, trying to give it some context so that people are informed. Sometimes people won't read the whole thing, but I'd rather have them have the information than as opposed to, here's a survey, please fill it out. So any questions on the opening letter? Any thoughts?
Doug, have you thought about, I mean, there are a lot of people in the community that don't understand exactly everything that went into our last bond. Have you thought about maybe referencing a previous bond and what we accomplished with it and some of the successes there in this letter to kind of set the stage for the future? Does that make sense?
It does.
Because with 220 million, without looking it up, my neighbor doesn't know what the last one was and what we did with it. You know what I mean? Like that's I don't know, just a suggestion.
And maybe what we'll do is do something on our website with what was covered in the last bond, which I know is out there.
Yeah.
And maybe since we're sending this out as an email, maybe we could link to questions about previous bond.
It's a good idea just to set the context.
I just don't wanna make it 3 pages for them to read
I
and then
totally
go
agree.
from there, and there's a lot that was reviewed, so maybe we do that. with a link.
And then, one other quick thing, on the 4 categories, one of them is additional infrastructure supporting academic improvement, or excuse me, academic program improvements. I know when we think about bonds, we think about buildings and infrastructure and stuff like that. I think, and again, this doesn't have to be here, but I think drawing the connection between structures and buildings and what it means for academic opportunities. Right, like the example that we always talk about is the robotics. Robotics, we built a new field house, we freed up space for some other program, and it's got this cascading effect that's more than just a gym or a field house or a new, you know what I mean? Again, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but something to think about.
Well, and we live in the world that we understand the difference between villages and bonds.
Right.
One could be operational, the other one structural, brick and mortar, so we need to have something that clarifies the difference between a bond request, and we just approved a special ed village. Why can't that build X many classrooms for a special ed?
That's where my head's going, yeah.
Especially with our private school partners. We get get that question a lot, because they don't have that separation in the funds that are raised. It's all part
Yep.
of what they
Part of-
do, and so making sure they understand operational versus bond funds is always helpful.
Sure, okay. All right, I'm gonna keep going, but don't hesitate to go back if you're like, you missed something, and go from there, all right? So we looked at the academic and the and infrastructure support programs. We tried to break them up into categories, so there are some that include multiple things. You can't include everything. There are people that wanted an extra bathroom over in one hallway of a building. It's like, well, hold on, or change the ceiling tiles in one. So we're gonna try to incorporate as much as we can. Some of these, we try to give as much description as we can. Now, there is something that says, is that just too much if they read the whole thing? I think the title hopefully will answer what they're voting on. The context is if they choose to read it. And I'm afraid to take out some components. Some we've shortened a lot, others we've tried to streamline them. We can try to make them a little bit shorter, but then it doesn't include some certain things, so.
Remind me real quick,
Yeah.
did you, maybe so this and I just didn't hear it, are you gonna do focus groups post the survey or not?
No.
You've done that in the past.
Well, what we've done in the past is after the board makes the decision of what actually is on, that we're voting for,
Right.
then I do groups that meet to go through it and discuss it and go from there. So I'll have, they won't be focus groups, more informational groups. That'll take place in
Yeah.
every elementary, PTOs, PTCs, they take turn, and just, quite frankly, I go to people's homes and they have all the neighbors come over and we talk about it, and that's kinda, that's the way to, yeah. I think at some point, we have to, make decisions, and we can't just keep adding to something, or, you know, I think by the time we get the feedback on this, you'll know what people are not supporting and what they are, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And if it's a tie, then maybe there are more focus groups, but we'll have time to do that.
And the survey is going, can you remind me who the survey is going to?
Everybody,
Anybody with everybody within our.
everybody that we have access to send, so we have a whole list of all of our, Golden Eagle, that's it,
Golden
right?
Ages.
Golden Age passes, we have we started collecting email addresses on those people about 4 years ago. We have access to them, we have the childcare, new families, we have clearly all the families in the district. I mean, we're not gonna send it to students.
Okay, but
Business partners,
We have a whole list of business partners, I would say some of the key business partners, not all of them,
Right.
but a lot of them through, that we've met with, that we've had their information for a long time.
just thinking about my neighbor across the street that has 2 kids that go to Unity, are they gonna get those? They'll also own them.
All right, build 2 new early childhood centers. The idea was to put one on the Georgetown campus, one on the Jamestown campus. Substantially smaller, newer buildings, clearly. The idea of keeping them on the north end and on the south end, less travel, more conducive to as opposed to taking most recently a 9th grade building and convert it to an early childhood, looks like a 9th grade building that's converted to an early childhood center, right? So maybe do some of that, and
middle
else.
school that used to be a high school.
Right, exactly, but everything else, well, we're not done with it, so just wait. So the next
I see that,
To me,
yeah.
the next
freshman can
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, for you it is.
Yeah, the next item is, if that were to be part of the package and that were to be successful, then can we convert the early childhood center into a career tech center, over there at that building? Met with Ottawa County, ISD, met with them about what that would look like. Whether it's a Hudsonville run, tech center, or it's a joint effort as a satellite campus with Ottawa County. You know, there's 2 issues that always drive the conversation about tech, I'll say career tech, is facilities and staffing. So we wanna work in partnership with the staffing. There's clearly funding issues that you get additional with CTE. That's a conversation I know Amy spends a lot of time on with the high school staff about what that funding structure looks like. Clearly, whenever I mention funding, it's Pat also was involved in that conversation. But if we have facilities, are there programs we could have at that facility that don't cost, you know, machine, or auto repair, I know it's not called auto repair, that's, I don't know what it's called, but, you know, just converting something for what they do with auto equipment over there, it's just, might be out of the scope, but that doesn't mean we can't have welding, nursing, robotic tech, all teacher education. We could have a lot of these classes over there still that are, that could be feasible at that location. Clearly a cost to renovate it, and go from there. So those are, while they're tied together, they're not necessarily tied together. However, I don't think it'd be wise to add 2 early childhood centers and not do something with that building. I don't wanna leave it blank, and when asked, would you be interested in getting rid of the building or selling the building, somebody else answers, no, I think it has a lot of, historical impact on the community still, and I think that would be a bad thing, in my opinion.
Unless you're selling it all.
Well, the central location of that building is valuable.
It is a huge value, it's not only central to the high school students,
Right.
but it's off of Chicago Drive.
Right.
It's like the tech center that's off of, 31, so that people from Grand Haven and West Hopkins, they're easy, it's not as easy for us, cause of Porchella, but yeah.
So, there may be an interest in attracting students from other districts.
Right, so we talked about that, so we have 12 kids on a wait list, Jenison has 6, Zealand has 5.
Yeah.
And if we can house a program, maybe those students come here. I do wanna make it clear, and I made it pretty clear with them, that our students have priority to a facility that's in our district. But it could also pull students from Granville, Byron Center, some of them travel to, Ottawa County to the tech, cause it's closer than Kent.
Yeah.
So if you live on the west side of Granville, even though you're still in Kent County, to some degree, it might be closer for them to go to the one over at Ottawa. So they said they do have some students that do that, and go from there, so, yeah. And it could be a pretty cool, thing. All right, a new 5-6 building on the south side of the district. This is not just a, equality for north and south, but it's a huge curriculum, advantage for us. I mean, you can imagine the conversation that Amy's having. We really have, you know, we've got, 4 K4 buildings. We've got, 2 K5s, so we've got a K2, we've got a 3-5, we have a 5-6, we have a 6-8, we have a 7-8, then we have a 9-12. So we have a lot of those things. Getting them consistent, what that would look like with a 5-6 building. Again, we can talk a little bit about enrollment, and I think that maybe even in Amy's presentation, we'll talk a little bit about enrollment. It might not be ready right now, but as you saw with the last 5-6 building, even though we wanna mirror what we just did, they can't just put a shovel in the ground the day after the election and have it open, in 18 months or 24 months. It takes 4 or 5 years to get it done, so it might be something we discuss. Maybe that's in the second series, or maybe in a 3rd series, and that's one of the last things we finish up. But that would be a conversation, I think, to ask our community. I'm looking for eye contact, if somebody's like, stop and go from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, yeah, we've got to right size it, because I can imagine the nightmare it is for what you just outlined. Like, I think about that all the time. And I would hate to, and you guys have put a ton of time into this, and I love this, that we're gonna go to the community with it. I would hate, this is gonna be a hard sell, I think.
Which one?
The 5-6, there's a $70 million price tag on it, and we have flat enrollment from 7 years ago. So just kind of thinking that through, if the survey comes back and it's not great, you know, do we have the ability to kind of go back to the drawing board on a couple of these things, or are we like locked in?
No, we are not locked into
here's the 9
anything.
things? Okay.
We are not locked into anything.
Okay.
You can say, take it off right now, and I can take it off right now. I can do it on my computer, I can cross it off here, but.
I'm not saying get rid of them, like, is there a different solution potentially that we would try to solve for, because I mean, I'd hate to tank the whole thing,
Yeah.
because there's like some really critical things I think that we
Yeah.
wanna get.
So let me say 2 things. Number 1, we did get a quick update on the cost. It's closer to 67 million, which I haven't updated on your sheet, but I have it up here. That's still close, we're talking, I get it. I just wanna make sure that will change a little bit. When I had the focus groups, the people on the south side of the district were adamant about getting a 5-6 building.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, for
So I'm
any
just
number of
saying-
reasons.
Yeah, Yeah, so I guess this will be, it gets almost to some additional questions we're gonna ask, so we get a better feel for the people that are in support or not, where they live. So I'll talk about that.
Does the sum, I didn't do the math, does the sum of all of these totals equal to, what was it?
3-something.
Pretty close, 300, 330, 300, I don't
So
know,
if
that's
the-
pretty close.
So then, kind of to piggyback on what Nick said,
Yeah.
so if this is something that is like, the community comes back and says, hard no.
Andrew's like, look, everything else is good, let's move on.
But the point is like, are there other priorities or other things that the focus group mentioned?
I think this covers everything the focus group
Okay.
mentioned, and feedback we've received,
Okay.
and work that we've done. I don't think we've missed anything that
Okay.
we can't cover with, sinking fund. I mean,
Yep.
there are some people that said, hey, you know what, we need new ceiling tiles in this building. We're not gonna ask about it, that's a
Right,
part of this,
right.
we can get
Okay.
that stuff done.
So this is
I don't
like the
think there's
universe,
anything
Okay.
missed.
Perfect, good.
Clearly, nothing major we've missed.
Right.
There wasn't somebody that came out and said, you know, there's an overwhelming, here's really what we think we should do, and we're like, we don't think so, we
Got
put
it.
it on there.
Got it, good.
Yeah.
Good Dr. Bennett, Nick and I were having a conversation within the last week or so when we were looking at this kind of stuff. One of the things that you mentioned is wanting to have same structure north and south. Has any thought, and I don't wanna get into every little building, but has any thought been given to taking Jamestown lower and making that a K through 4, like we have throughout the rest of the district with the elementaries, and then taking Jamestown upper and making that a 5-6 building? And it-
Yes
I mean-
and no, we don't have the capacity to do it at Jamestown lower, that doesn't mean we can't add on to
Mhm.
Jamestown lower.
Mhm.
We have to add on to Jamestown upper also.
Okay.
The answer is yes, anything's possible.
Okay.
We've heard from our construction and architects that all it takes is time and money. Did I summarize that, right? Yeah, so, but yes, it's possible.
So,
I think the one thing that we're always concerned about is building it for the future. The other conversation was, does it have to mirror the other building, or can it be a little bit smaller?
Mhm.
Cause it's, instead of holding 625 kids, it's gonna hold 520 kids. Can you get rid of a few classrooms? So all of that conversation is still in place.
Dr. Van Jet, may I add? So Riley was built, not full to start.
Mhm.
And it's Jamestown, Riley, it's just grown into it. And then there came a time, when there was an addition on the building at Riley. It was part of the 2015 bond. But yeah, it's kind of been the history of Hudsonville. Jamestown has been a slower, steadier growth, and Georgetown's been a faster growth. But that's kind of been the pattern, so.
Mhm.
The 770 homes going in Katy Corner from Jamestown lower give us a little, time pause.
Yeah.
That's it, but again, it goes back to the conversation, quite frankly, Melissa had, is the cost of homes in that area. May not be an elementary age population, it could be a secondary age population, or now that the interest rates have dropped, maybe we're gonna see a whole shift again, like we've seen, I mean, there's so many variables that we could spend all night doing
Yeah.
this.
so I'm just curious, so Nick and Joy, you both seemed to focus right away on the 5-6 building, and I'm not sure if you're talking about the cost or the concept.
For me, I've always wondered about the concept, like if it's needed.
Cost or concept?
Concept.
Okay.
Well, especially thinking of the families that are lower L, upper L, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, like that's a lot of shifting, like if that
It
could
is.
be.
So our conversation was, quite frankly, if we open a 5-6 building down there, we'd take Jamestown upper and lower, and make them Jamestown north and south.
That, yeah, and then I,
So we'd have K4 across the board,
mhm,
we'd have 2 5-6, 2 7-8s,
yeah.
you know, little high
that
school.
would-
And it, you know, based on the location of those buildings and families, now you're taking truly your residential areas and you put them in those elementaries versus kids going back and forth, and not getting kids at both buildings.
Yeah.
You'd have both your kids at one building.
Yeah, that'd be great, if that were the case, I think, it was interesting, I was chatting with a parent who works in another district, and she said she She adores the 5-6 model for the kids, she loves it so much, so, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting to hear that.
So that was we feel the same way. I don't wanna send a kid K2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6.
that's my only concern about the 5-6 on that
100%
side.
agree.
Should we sprinkle some of, I know you don't wanna make this too wordy, but should we sprinkle that in here or not? You know, like that's, I think that's the same thing.
I don't think that's what they,
Sure.
that's not what this is for, necessarily to like give them everything, just get some directional information.
Yeah.
Mine is, no, I think once we built the 5-6 on the north, like, the clock was ticking, we've gotta
Oh,
match it
yeah,
up on the
I
south,
mean,
I 100% agree, I'm just, that information is great. Cause yeah, we've got the unique thing with Jamestown, like, that's the only building we do, so if you're saying, hey, we're gonna write, that this solves that kind of issue as well, maybe that's good to share, I don't know when you share it, but like, I want this to pass.
Yeah,
And
no, I just.
And you gotta think back to the reason we did what we did, was because people were opposed to not being at Jamestown Elementary. And so that was the compromise we made, which now obviously in hindsight, we may have just better off rip the Band-Aid off. But that's what you're gonna, that's kind of how we got to where we are. And I don't know if you knew that history.
I didn't.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
really don't.
Because no one really wanted to have to be called something else.
Right.
Honestly, and
Ego
so,
pride.
that was, that was the only reason, but it was clearly because that was sort of the compromise. So, again, the evolution of things that happened, and that is definitely part of the conversation. If someone has questions, I think we need to let people know
Mhm.
that there are other options
Yeah.
to try to avoid this every 2-year change.
For sure.
But we want to make sure that we have somewhat of the equity piece between north and south, because I think that is the key.
Well, for curriculum, I'm sure.
In having a conversation with people in the area, every time you mention Jamestown North and South, they're like, oh, that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense, they wanna work. I think part of it was when you had a brand new building in Jamestown Upper, if you made both of them K5 North and South, there was clearly a difference between where your kid went to school. And now you have an opportunity to go to a brand new building for at least a few years before they went to an upper, and that
Yeah.
eased some of the decision the board had to make at the
That
time.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay,
AC will be happy.
build a dedicated indoor band and athletic facility. This conversation came up, quite a bit, and obviously you see other districts, Kentland's putting one in, Spring Lake just put one in, Jenison has one. And it's really about, both, academic programming and athletic programming, because you can use both during the day and, do it on site, which allows us to not have to not use it during the school day. So where our current lacrosse field is, at the high school, right across from Gemmons, to retrofit and connect the building directly on that site. Right there, we spent a lot of time with preliminary design, what could we do, what should we do, we talked about many concepts, and this is kind of where we landed. Give it a full field so our band can be in there, quite frankly, all fifth hour, and into, you've got band camp that can be in there when it's, it might not be air conditioned, but it's clearly controlled versus being out on the turf in the middle of August. And then you have, it can be used in the winter months also, for programming and things like that. So they're looking at something, I believe, very similar to what this.
It's not on that, it's not on the next, is it on the wrong?
It's on their next one.
Which is on
The one that comes up in
Oh,
November.
of
Forest Hills is not, on their next bond, doing it. They do not, the pre-high school and put one locally is a challenge. Is that fair? And that cost, remember the 2 million that I took from the one above it? It's in that one right below it. So, but again, we could definitely, there can be changes to it too before we get to there. We think this is quite frankly, this is also a facility that can be used for indoor competitions, whether it be band or athletics to some degree. You're not gonna play a full-fledged football game in there, but you could play a soccer game when it's really bad weather outside. I think most of I'll just say football they wanna be outside, so they're not using this unless you're in the state finals every year, and maybe they will be, but I'm just saying it looks different, yes.
There would be some bleachers
there'll be some viewing area,
Yeah.
some, whether it's stands, bleachers, raised, there's a lot of ideas. We're looking at, Kentland's got a really nice one going in. Clearly, if this is successful, what the design.
The Kentwood one's on their main campus?
Yes.
They're between M6 and their high school.
Yep.
They took a bunch of woods down there, it sits back there, so.
Oh.
Yeah, if you're driving on M6 coming,
I know what you're talking about.
heading west, you'll see the,
walk across the campus.
Okay.
It's not connected, you just walk right across the road and just out back, you have a bus
the
drive.
service road, yeah. So it's protected from the high school, but from the freshman campus, they'd walk kind of across and then out. It's almost by their weight room.
Fitness center's right there, so it just comes right across.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think the next one was important, but we put it in there, just kidding, there was a lot of requests based on this building, I don't know if you saw the flood and the stairs when you walk down the stairs that way, or this is that, the flood had dried up a little bit today. But, we just need maybe even, in concert with some of the community also to have a venue that people can.
Yeah, and I think for people to realize how long this facility has been here without much change compared to what the size of the district has grown.
Yeah.
Because to me, this seems like peanuts compared to what should be done. And kudos to you guys for keeping it such a low number, but to me, I don't wanna say it's embarrassing, but it's sort of like, okay, so this is what we have, where are the rest of your people, right? So that's my opinion.
Yeah. Where
Would this involve getting this thing out of here and putting a new one right here, or would it be somewhere else?
Just a general idea, would we put it right in the parking lot directly to our, west here, across the parking lot, where there's like a practice type area? Put it on that area, same parking lot, and then turn this into a parking lot or a green space when it's done. We might change the bus loop for Park, it could expand some of the playground stuff for Park Elementary potentially back there, gives us some more options.
Are other administrative offices, maybe this is a silly question, but are other administrative offices in other districts separate from some other building? Is it like a standalone building out everywhere, pretty much?
No, of many that are connected to the building.
Okay.
Horse Hills is not.
Zealand's right on that corner.
That's right, Zealand's not.
Jennison's kind of unique, right, because they're connected.
They're connected to the Fine Arts Center, but that's not.
Is anyone else in an old house?
I don't think this is a house, I think this is a dentist office.
Does anyone else in an
Seems
old
like a dentist
office?
If you drive by, it looks like a dentist.
Yeah.
And to Dawn's point, we'd have to actually move it like we are with your sister's house, because it's a historic building, it's been here so long.
Yes.
If we do this, you know how fast this thing will.
Forever.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know you're serious there, Fred.
Time for money, Dr. Vanderbeck.
Yeah, time and money, that's all it takes. Yeah, and by, you know how it is, that's probably one of the latter things that we do, so it could be as many as 10 years from now before we get it done, which is another long time, so we'll figure it out. All right, next up, the safety enhancements. We had these in a different order, a lot of feedback, we moved some orders around, so we put some of the ticket items first. Safety, we think, is really the number one priority, but we put it second, because just the second category, just because of the number of things in there. Technology and infrastructure, a lot of that comes when you have a bond issue, we wanna earmark a certain portion for technology. You can't just put technology, 15 million. So, but it does impact security, right? So that's where you see a lot of the enhancements with security, whether it be updated cameras, things that we would have. We really like to update the, every interior door with what you'd see on our exterior doors with the badge. You see that at the 5-6 building, any new construction, we're doing that, the high school connector has that, the interior of Park Elementary, I don't know if you noticed that, those have it. And so the new doors, we like all the interior doors from a security standpoint to also have, the security badges. Sidewalks and pedestrian pathways, there's been a lot of discussion on that, a lot of questions about we need sidewalks, and there's a lot of education that still needs to happen, that we cannot just put sidewalks because we want sidewalks, nor is it our responsibility to sidewalk what the township or the city should sidewalk, so, I just wanna make it clear, so you see it's a very small amount, but it was a topic of conversation, so I didn't want to ignore it as they don't even care about whatever, so we put it in there as, the cost. Clearly, that's something we can still work with and go from there. Okay, facility improvements, this was the number one question by everybody at every focus group right off the bat, was air conditioning. We tried to educate the best we can regarding, the buildings that have it, those that don't, those that have some of it. You've got, high school has it in portions. Georgetown has, the geothermal, South Elementary has the individual units in their classrooms, so we did the best we can to educate. The price tag on there, we actually, when we started, I wanna say it was like 71 million, and I think we got it down based on some chiller conversations and what that looks like, down right now to about 43. They've convinced us they can get it lower if needed. I know, maybe not, but we,
I would love to see the survey results broken down by age group, because I would be shocked if the over 50 group is excited about this, because that's not how they lived.
oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And the
I'm
fact
talking
that-
about just the focus group, I'm not talking about, like, if we add some of that.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
demographic
when you
stuff.
get these surveys
yeah.
back, do we know it by like who they were or age? Because, yes, demographics I think would be huge.
Yeah.
Because when I look at that price
Well,
tag
we'll talk about
compared
that in a little
to
bit.
a 5-6
We can,
million,
but yeah.
for what, 4 weeks out of the year? I just don't know.
I'd rather take that money and do some of the other things on this.
Well, see, that's it, and we're in that age group, right? So
Well, and I
They're the
also-
ones that are voting too, so.
that's what I'm saying. So,
But I also say, we are not the ones teaching in the second floor of the middle school.
I know that.
And that's,
I
if you
hate to
ask
say it,
them,
but I don't
there's a
think
gentleman
there's-
behind you that would beg to differ in age group than what you voted
Second
for.
floor of the South Campus.
Yeah, oh, I know, I
They
don't
get up to
disagree, I
100%.
just know that philosophically.
I'm a yes.
No, 100%.
Just so you know.
For-
She's a no.
Well, I gotta know, but I'm just telling you,
We wanna get them back.
philosophically, it's gonna be a hard sell for the
It-
price tag.
And we'll also say this, there might be other ways to reduce this cost by addressing the second floor on our secondary buildings, which could impact that also. So we can have that conversation, but we had to put it on there because it was the number one request. And keep in mind, the focus groups took place when it was getting warmer. Unfortunately, voting in November isn't traditionally the warmest month of the year. So, we talked about that, we're like, I hope next year it's 100, the first month and a half of school.
If you want this part to pass.
Sorry, Mr. Anderson.
Can we just
Okay.
put space heaters in all the voting areas?
Yeah. Warm it up. All right, upgrade playground, that was pretty much the number 2 question that came up. There is still a misunderstanding behind ADA accessible and ADA enhanced. All of our playgrounds, to be clear, are ADA accessible. They meet all standards required. However, there is still a desire to make them enhanced. If you look at the playground at Park Elementary, which you saw, it's rubber and it's really nice to accept the equipment, everything, and so redoing the playground equipment. If you look at the cost of this, it's actually, it might be 7 million versus 6 because we have 7 elementaries to do, because Park is done. But there could be a few other things with Park, but it's about $1 million a building to do their playground. Furniture was another big ask by our teaching staff and their focus groups. We have furniture that's been in the building since before time. Some of you may have used that furniture. I'll look at Mr. DeWitt. I'll also maybe look at Mrs. Lee. You might use that furniture. So it's furniture is a huge expense. It just is. We put the furniture at Park Elementary, when I met with the teachers last week and talked to them, the number one thing they said about the improvements of the building was the new furniture. Kids aren't, because the whole building got new furniture, not just the new wing. And, kids aren't falling over, it was a big deal. And then the last one is replacing aging roof, essential building maintenance along with exterior. This was the beautification thing that was talked about. Can we, I don't wanna say make the buildings look nice, because the custodian, they work hard. They do a nice job with what they have, but can we really do some major upgrades? It's a pretty big price tag, and that might be something we want to take a closer look at. But if you look at the exterior of the high school, for example, you have the South Campus, the North Campus, which used to be kind of the freshman area, how that's all kind of looks new, and then the field house looks new, the rest of it looks not new. Do you wrap the building so it all looks new? Do do you kind of clean up some of the exterior and some of the sidewalks and some of the areas that the iron and the water has taken its toll and those kind of things. And then, you know, do you put new lockers in, paint the hallways, and redo the bathroom tiles, and that smell like bathrooms, right? Okay. All right, I'm trying to speed up a little bit here. Athletic improvements, the soccer field, if you know anything about the soccer on the north, on the north end, it's in really, really bad shape. We're the only, I think we're the only OK Red school without a turf soccer field. Doing something with that field at that location. It's a great entrance. We probably have to do something with a little bit of a press box over there, but turfing that, over at the soccer field on the north end.
Did we talk about the turf on the football field too?
No.
How old is that?
Well, in a minute.
Oh. It's on here?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
We did not put it on the survey, because we have to do it.
Yeah, okay. That's
You know what I mean? So we have to review that turf. It's usually 10-year lifespan, is that about right? I think we're at 13.
Yeah.
With it right now. The only thing that really is saving it for another couple years maybe is the fact that our band is not on there for practice every day. And if they were, then it would be, we'd have already probably replaced the area now.
Yeah, well, I was a little surprised that you didn't have a turf on the soccer field you just have to do it also. But you did.
We can.
Well, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we change it now, I'm just,
Yeah, the only-
to your point, it's
bad, and I think we have enough people that understand it needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
So we were thinking it might be a selling point also, and if we can bond it, it's better than having to operational or sinking fund it.
100%.
Okay.
Upgrade the stadium locker rooms, add some restrooms, talking about at the, stadium itself. That the locker rooms themselves don't fit not only our visiting teams, but our home team that's in there. So redoing the locker rooms at that location. Track and field at Riley, and this was a big thing to try to have a balance in the, field utilizations. We have, everything's on the north end of the district or in the central part of the district. There's nothing on the south end, so can we put a field over at the track and field, can we improve that over at Riley? And then the next, on the same one, on that one, and then do another turf location on the south end of the district. So it kind of balances out what we have a little bit, at least, on the south. Maybe, maybe it's practice, it could be lacrosse, it could be a lot of things. I know every time Rebecca Fabiano knows we have more gyms that she can allow people to use, they're booked. You add more fields, they're booked. It puts more on her, but it's meter usage, but yeah.
Couple quick questions.
Yeah.
So on the previous one, the locker rooms and restrooms,
Yeah.
so the restrooms, just to be clear, those will be extra restrooms at the stadium, not where the locker, like public restrooms?
I think we're looking at adding facilities and in the locker room facility. I don't know about public. I mean, they would be public for the kids, but that's it.
Okay, so we're not talking about adding, like, right now we have restrooms, public restrooms by either side of it.
This isn't that.
Got
Yeah,
it.
this is not that.
And then for the track and Riley stuff, I've heard some feedback about lack of restrooms there. Especially with all the practices and things that go on. Was that a comment that you heard about?
Yeah. I feel like we did something. I don't remember. Maybe no.
I don't think we have anything now.
We don't really, now I was curious if that's gonna be upgraded and something, is that something?
There's several, that'll go through the survey, there's several facilities that it could be, added to.
Okay.
Like a restroom out the back or something, but we don't have it in these things right now.
We can take a look at what that was.
There's lots of space and there's kids practicing everywhere. but
Yeah.
There's just not.
There's no restrooms, so there's like, yeah.
You're going in
It's
and
just
out
a
of the
running,
building, right? Or not? It's open.
Yeah, the closer we can get into a facility that has water and sewer,
Yeah.
then it changes, if not, it changes the price substantially to run it out there. So, I'll put it down as a note to have that discussion. And then last but not least, the, softball, baseball, several, we see more and more schools are now doing that. And Kenowa Hills is doing that, they in the process of finishing that out, lights and whole new baseball, softball area over at Kenowa Hills. I know Rockford's already done it. Forest Hills is all that way, so, just kind of maintaining, and upgrading those facilities, not the dugouts, not the seating, not the press boxes, not the fences, just the turf and the lights on the facility, which would make it much more usable, deeper, earlier in the season from the field standpoint and the light standpoint, and then later in the, for practices or events, can go from there. You look like you're thinking about.
I hate turf for baseball, so.
It's funny, because when I first came here, asking the coaches about turf with this last bond issue, they're like, absolutely not, grass is what we want. And it wasn't a year after we passed the bond issue, they're like, I'm assuming we're getting turf, we've been waiting for it.
6 months.
6 months maybe, they absolutely love it now that they play on it, they think it's the best. They're like, it's the best playing surface, the ball bounces consistently, it's just the best, so I always envisioned the turf in Toronto on the field when they used to play. Concrete, it's not that anymore, so they, even the dirt is synthetic, whatever, and I'm like, alright, so they absolutely love it, they wanna go there and play it all the time, so, yeah.
Not a no-go because of that, it's sit there
We'll
and
find out, right?
I'll stare at the ballot for a
Yeah,
second.
We'll find out.
see some of these, it'll be very
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, all these things are good, valid ideas, and so it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
when you start to have to prioritize them for a period of time.
Sure.
What's the most important.
Yeah, and you could very well get to the end and say, these are not all important, but we've narrowed it down, we still have to make cuts in some of them. Then maybe we can, try to cut some and save as many as possible. I just don't wanna I don't wanna do it to the point that it's not something I think the board was very frugal when it came to the field house, and it turned out amazing. I think we put in some nice facilities, the freshman campus when it first went in is a beautiful facility. We see things that the board has made decisions on, I know some of you weren't here and some of you've been here, that I think people are proud of the way you spend the money that people vote for. There's always gonna be people that can't believe you've done that, but for the most part, you hear a lot of positive feedback for what you've done. So then, some other things I wanna throw out there, that Jeff recommended, and we'll have a chance to work on some of the demographic questions. So I wrote down the age level question about demographics, which ties to a question about, are you a parent of a student, or are you a resident that got the survey from somebody else that gave it to you? Which could be, we might even put it on our website if you wanna fill it out, which means anybody that goes to our website can fill it out. Are they a resident, or what does that look like? Are they a staff member? Is it a student that maybe is a coach, which means they got the survey, and so they might wanna click on, yes, I'm a student. Or are they not just a community member, but a community member that maybe doesn't have kids, or do you have kids that will be coming through the system, or have your kids all graduated? We can ask those questions. Maybe we ask about what age level do you fall in, like maybe it's under the age of 30, between 31 and 50, or 51 or higher, or something to your point about air conditioning. Trying to see what group I fall in, so.
I know.
We're gonna have a higher group than that, I'm just kidding, so. And then questions about, how do you prefer to receive information about a bond proposal? So do you want it via, email, do you want it via, mailing, do you want it, just on the website? So it gives us a better idea of how to campaign and educate our community. So maybe one of the last questions, in general, do you support Hudsonville Public Schools pursuing a bond issue if it doesn't raise the tax rate? And go from there. And then maybe we take each one of these topics, there are 16 of them, I think 16, pretty sure there's 16, maybe 17, each one, and saying, what are the top, we list them, what is your number 1, what is your number 2, what is your number 3? Because there will be people on here that'll vote no on everything, and that doesn't help you. They will also vote yes on everything. That doesn't help you either, because we know we have to eliminate some. So maybe we can find out what are the top 3. And then maybe you can say, okay, those are low hanging fruit, we know those 3, and then we can start to evaluate, or maybe if you get the top 3, you'll end up narrowing down to the top 5 or 6, and then you can say, okay, keep it. So that's what we're looking at
Well,
doing.
a great summary.
Questions?
It needs to be done.
Awesome.
Does that help? I know I took a little bit of time on that.
I'll try to be quick. If everything on here sort of adds up to this 220, right, how do I say this? There are gonna be people who don't like certain things, and it may make sense to remove them. I'm not saying we should add things that we don't need to this, but I'm just saying, as a follow-up to the survey, there's gonna probably need to be some sort of response that, listen, community, we heard you, here's what the focus group said, we've heard what you said, these are things we're proposing to include on the bond, however, based on your feedback, these are some things that we've tweaked, reduced, or eliminated. Will this survey allow us to do that?
I don't know, it's a good question. I feel like we'll be able to look at this data and make some decisions, and I do think there needs to be a public report on what the survey said, and even based on this information, the board is gonna table this item until a later date. If it works, and there could be things on here that, you know, it's easy to do some of these items if they're not part of a bond, and we can afford to do them as part of maybe a sinking fund project or another project. But we can't, if there's something on here that we are doing, well, we can tweak it, but we can't just get rid of it, because we changed our mind after they voted. It's like, they voted yes, let's build a $400 million, or whatever, a $100 million 5-6 building, and not do a couple other things. No different than we can't say, you know what we missed this. Let's do that.
I'm saying before it goes to a vote. I'm not saying it goes to a vote and then we change, right? I understand we can't do that. I'm just saying, people love to hear a story, right? We started this, it aligns with our strategic plan in all these different ways, right? We had focus groups, we met with X number of people and got feedback, and we took all of that feedback and we put it into this. And then we got a survey, and those survey results said X, Y, Z. We listened to you, we heard you, and now here's what we're proposing. I guess my point is, or my question is, can we take this, and are we comfortable maybe with saying, we've heard you, these are some things we're gonna tweak, right?
Yeah.
And here's where we landed, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Does that make sense?
It does, make 100% sense. I think,
Post-survey.
Post-survey, pre-vote.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, then we can do all of that. I mean, all that information has to go out. I think part of it goes out when I start traveling the district, and you will get feedback. You will get unsolicited feedback. And no matter where you are, somebody will come, I've already had people come up to me about things they wanna get done, and I'm like, yep, we're having those conversations. So the answer is yes to all of that.
Okay.
We just have to try to get as much input as we can before, you know, it is easy if a couple of these items, 4% of your community would support it. That's all.
So that piggyback, the next question kind of follows out of that. So I don't expect you to know the details of the bonds that have not been approved with surrounding districts. However, based on what you know, was there a process to get to the election similar to this, or is what we're doing sort of, as far as you know, different? Do you know?
So the last vote, the last bond, question was up in November. And it's just Dr. Vanderjack said, the change in absentee ballots has really changed the calculus. It's just, it's different now. We used to do it in May because it was worth it. And, just the numbers, it's so much easier to vote no absentee. So the work involved to get that many yes voters out, and this is a Hudsonville challenge, is that because they've passed always, people expect them to pass always. And so we're seeing a lot of, it's surprising the people that aren't voting just because you know it's gonna pass. But they don't do that as much when it's the big high stakes presidential and governor's race.
Yep.
They don't, so they're out voting, and I think that really captures it, is when it's just a higher turnout election, and the consultant groups are telling us that we're gonna do better in a higher turnout election.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and
Are you asking if those that did not have a successful bond issue went through the same process we're going through?
or a similar
Yeah.
process, cause listen, like, we're asking for feedback, like,
Right.
the vote shouldn't be surprised if people show up.
I don't,
Yeah, I think what you guys, and, you know, kudos to Dr. Vanderjack for starting this process really early.
Yeah.
Right, because it's not unusual for a district to say, you know what, we've got some debt rolling off, like, let's, 6 months from now, like, let's go have an election.
Yeah.
And, you can imagine, right, that's a lot more difficult, because you just, you don't have that much context, you haven't gotten feedback. I think the community conversations, the fact that the list was generated from a series of community conversations, I think is a really great way to start. And
Totally agree.
so I think you guys you're going about it the right way, which I think is very good.
Yeah, and to get to your point about turnout, I mean, so the district to the north, that for 2 years in a row didn't have a bond pass, the first time was 31% turnout. And then this past May, it was like 27% voter turnout. And then our friends at the Lake Shore, 2 years ago, had 29% turnout. And none of those were presidential or governor elections, right? So the hope is, hopefully we can, you know, use that for a benefit. The more people that vote, the better informed our outcomes, right? Anyway, thank you, that helps.
You know, a quick scan, just a quick scan of districts that, failed. We got a lot of rural, smaller districts. I mean, Whitmore Lake's in there, but that was a millage increase, that wasn't a bond. And so they're pretty decent size, but the rest, small rural districts, that, yeah.
November will be a
That's the
good
whole-
indicator.
Yeah.
This one.
We had 7.
Yeah, Rockford, those are gonna be,
Rockford,
those will be
Rockford,
great
Rockford.
test cases, yeah.
In 2019, it was 70% yes, 30%, there's, 2019, no, that's not good, 70% yes, 30% no, so it's a different world.
And not raising the tax rate. I mean, we could easily ask for another $500,000 and say, let's do all this stuff. You know, I think we can weigh in something.
I totally,
Worst case scenario, we get it done sooner than we think, we can come back and 7 years from now, 8 years from now, do it again.
perfect, very well done, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And again, if you have any other feedback, please let me know prior to that November.
And you do have that one, just let us know if we're missing anything, basically, or that last question is on.
Yeah, that's gonna be on there, and I know some of the feedback will be, yeah. I'm already telling you, I'm well aware of some feedback. It's all good. It's all good.
Open text.
We're limited to like 256 characters or whatever the tweets are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way you'll see if you miss it.
Exactly. All right, Mr. Briggs, playground business.
Before we go on to that, I
Sorry.
just wanna, reiterate what was already said about the work that you guys have put into this together. It's very impressive. It's what you've been doing all along, but it's very easy for me as a board member to be able to have conversations with people out there, because I know you've done the homework, and you've really looked at the scenarios and just about every possible question that could be asked and things like that. I don't think, from what I hear on the board, there's gonna be anyone on this board, and I'm not speaking for them, but just from what I heard, that is not 100% into this and saying, we support this. We'll see what happens when the surveys come in. The one thing that is the biggest caveat to me is, we've got it on page 16 here, where we've got and it isn't for this part of the presentation, but we've got 8 years ago the enrollment, and in 2025 the enrollment, and And a lot of people look at that and say, you got 2 more people than you had in 2017, what is this all about? That's the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, and we'll just have to see what happens with that. But as far as doing your homework and being ready for what we're proposing, I wanna applaud you for that, and thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is the, Early Childhood Center Playground bid, piece. In your packet is, a recommendation for two trades, 2 contracts, 1 earthwork, 1 playground, and then the bid tabs attached. Before I get into those, I'll give a little background on this. The playground we're looking to upgrade is pretty tired. It's the one on, School Avenue, next to the Early Childhood Center. We've been doing little things along the way, but the larger piece of equipment there really is in need of replacement. And just in the last 5 years, the, enrollment for we call it the funded preschool program, the 4-year-old program, has just gone significantly up. And, that funding source, GSRP, is paying for most of this work. So from just that one funding source, we have $162,000 to pay for this. Because it is funded by GSRP, makes it so much harder too. It's gotta be prevailing wage. This bond work is not prevailing wage. This has to be prevailing wage. And that is the reason, when you look at the bid tab, we don't have a lot of bidders. We do have, a nice range of bidders on playground equipment, which is rare. And we usually get a lot more, if we had this category of earthwork, we'd have 4 or 5. But it's the time of year, it's not a lot of work, and this should start this fall, might linger over the winter. Prevailing wage, it's not the most appealing, because what we thought we were gonna have is 2 more real quality bids, we don't have them. However, the one we have is a very, very good bid. Advance does a lot of work for us, we're always happy with their work. Most recently, they did a project at, the food service building upgrade over there. They were strong, you know, they helped they solved a lot of issues over there, so, yeah, that's really the story. We did significant, if you look in there, we did significant value engineering. We had to pare this way, way back. And part of the reason we had to pare it back is, there's some expense with prevailing wage, just comes along with it. And, we had to test the market. So, we had pieces in here we're taking out, that's all covered in the notes. But the low bid, for instance, on playground equipment, $118,000, and we're taking out 3 major items that come up with a recommended contract of roughly $81,000. The next category, earthwork, you see corresponding changes there as well. $97,000 base bid, and we're recommending roughly $61,000. So we've had meeting after meeting after meeting to value engineer, which is no way to say cut stuff, but we did that and brought it back at a more responsible price for the funding we have available for the project. We're gonna cover the rest of this with funds that are in community ed fund. They've got fund balance to pay for this, and it'll benefit. We're not paying for all of it. We're roughly paying for 13/16 from the grant, the rest of it has to be paid for 3/16 with local funds, and they've got the money to pay for it. So, any questions?
Yeah, it's just funny, after going through the proposed ideas for the bond project, and then right away seeing the playground equipment for ECC, my first question was, will this be movable?
There'll be parts that are, however, we've got the kids right now. We've got the funding source, we're really not where they want us to be, and they have one of those like the golden rules, he is the goat makes the rule, they want this,
Gotcha.
we have issues, that was one of the big things, Dawn, that we covered this year with that multi-purpose space, the mobility space in there. Our licensing, we